All right. Thank you everyone for being here. Start by briefly orienting us to where we are. When we last met, we were in the middle of a caucus, and that caucus was called to give both sides an opportunity to consider questions. We had left you all with one question, and you had presented a list of 200 questions. And so obviously that required some time to reflect on and respond. And I trust you received our response yesterday.
We got those near the end of the day, yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
The question that the district had posed to MTEA before the break was whether there's any structure, timing, arrangement, or split, any approach within the 2.63 statutory ceiling that works for your members and for the district. So in the week that followed, the district did its part. We prepared, reviewed, and transmitted responses to the questions that you had submitted. We answered the substantial majority of those and identified work in progress items that we're actively working on supplementing where necessary, and formally objected in writing to a small number of requests that fall, in our view, outside the mandatory subject of bargaining under Act 10. We provided a written explanation for each objection and an open invitation to MTEA to respond if it disagrees. The lift there was substantial, given that it was 200 questions. So it took 18 days, but we addressed those. We're now on day 19, and yet we don't have an answer to the one question that the district has posed to MTEA, which I mentioned a moment ago. Before we get to that question, I want to address something directly because I understand it's been said that the district has not been truthful about its proposals. And I want to take that seriously because the district takes its credibility at this table very seriously. Here's what the district has said, and here is what is true. All three of the district's proposals provide the full 2.63% base building increase to total base wages. That is accurate. What is also true, and what the district has never hidden, is that a January 1 effective date means that employees receive approximately 6 months of that increase in year one, not 12 months. Both things are true simultaneously. The size of the raise is full in terms of percentage. The timing in year one is half. Those things are different, and the district has not confused them. MTEA is correct that an employee earning $50,000 who receives a 2.63% increase on January 1, 2027 will see approximately $657 in additional wages in the first year compared to $1,315 under MTEA's July 1 proposal. The district knows that, and the 6-month difference is exactly where the district's year one fiscal savings come from. That is the trade-off that we are asking MTEA to consider, and we've been transparent about it from the beginning. What the district has also said is that the increase is base building and permanent. Starting January 1, 2027, every MTEA represented employees' base wage would be higher by 2.63% under our proposals. That higher base compounds forward for the rest of each employee's career. The district is not asking MTEA's members to accept a smaller percentage raise. It's asking them to receive the same raise 6 months later so that a district with a $46 million structural deficit and a budget adoption deadline can manage its lawful fiscal obligations. That is an honest trade-off, and we stand behind it. And we're asking MTEA to engage with it. So we come back to the same question that we've been asking since March 5th. Is there any approach within that 2.63% ceiling, any structure, any timing, any split that MTEA can work with? That is the question that this entire process exists to answer, and we would like that answer today.
There are two other people as well, though.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to clarify that too, that there were two other offers on the table for the 1.5 and 1.1.
Right. Yeah. Dr. Casilius makes a good point that all three of the initial proposals that we had made remain on the table, and that remains our offer today.
Is there any question about the other two that we need to explain when they understand?
Do you have any questions regarding any of the proposals?
So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for the time that was spent in response to our questions. We really appreciate having the responses that you did share. We know, I think we divided this up into 4 different parts. And so we wanted to acknowledge that at the table here today. So in the first section, and again, our team hasn't had an opportunity to digest this document fully. But in your first section that you titled Questions Answered, Part 1, you said that you provided responses over the district's general objection. And then Part 2, partial objections. Part 3, complete objections. And then Part 4, you identified as work in progress. You said the following questions are not objected to, but require additional time to compile complete and accurate responses. So we want to be clear that our position is that all of these questions are relevant. And again, when we have an opportunity in caucus to go through the sections, but we consider all of the questions relevant. So for the MTEA to make informed decisions, we must understand your financial position in detail. At our last session, you asserted that MPS does not have the funds for our proposal to pay all frontline workers a very modest 2.63% cost of living adjustment on July 1st. And so I appreciate your starting us off. But that is the place that we are starting from. So I'd like to start with some discussion before we take time to caucus. So the initial round of information requests, we have additional questions that have come up over the past couple of weeks as a number of developments have occurred in the district with budgeting. But we want to systematically work through the initial requests and try to keep this very organized so that we can have the full picture of your financial position.
Amy, can I ask if you have the additional questions prepared for today? Or are you going to submit those after you review the 200?
We will likely post some additional questions today.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we'll discuss, but then we'll also send a formal.
You'll give us a written list of new questions, additional questions. Okay.
Okay. What we don't yet have from you is the math, your math, with the clear costing from each of the 3 scenarios that you laid out, option A, option B, option C. We need to understand how you're doing that costing and what number, what total you say is the cost for each of the 3 proposals. I know that you gave us in our first session 3 initial proposals, option A, option B, option C. Then when we had our second bargaining session, you submitted the exact same document, to my understanding, with the same 3 proposals. And so we would like to see that math.
Are you thinking the cost for the increase and then the cost for any other additional? I don't know if it's even, you can tell me if for bargaining purposes, if we can only give the CSI or the additional cost for, like, once you give CSI, then there's additional costs around benefits and around steps and lanes, because then that would then impact the final overall cost. Is that what you're looking for on that, or were you just thinking only CSI? I mean, only CPI, sorry.
Include it all.
I am asking for your math on CPI only.
Okay.
And we would appreciate seeing the initial cost and then the cost with roll-ups that you're referencing.
Benefits and steps.
Not steps.
Okay.
We're just talking about cost of living adjustment.
But with the roll-ups of benefits added in.
To cost of living.
Yeah, I think.
I just want to be clear.
I think to the extent that that the base wages impact other costs, it's important to identify those.
Yeah.
And so we'll include that information
Separately, though, I think.
Sure, if there's additional information that you want to present, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear about what we're asking for.
Yep.
Can I just clarify one other thing on steps and lanes? You had requested meet and confer on steps and lanes. We haven't gotten a request for that date on the calendar yet. Is that something you will be requesting at a future date?
We will be requesting meet and confer on steps, lanes, salary schedules, overall compensation, any manual or documents that the administration relies on to place people on the salary schedules. Yes.
Okay.
So we understand that the current CPI, cost of living adjustment of 2.63%, was determined in the past and that we are constrained by that.
It was determined in the what? Past.
Past.
Yes, okay.
And we are constrained by that. But our members are filling up their gas tank now, today, and are paying $1 or more a gallon to do that than they were 3 weeks ago.
Mhm.
So just fuel costs alone are a significant hit to our members' household budgets right now. So it's not easy for, not knowing your entire financial position, that aside. It's not easy for MTEA workers to move when in real life, our members' real life dollars right now, today, don't go as far as they did 3 weeks ago when we started bargaining. And we're here bargaining for nearly 6,000 people. $6,000 frontline workers in classrooms and in schools every day. And so Bob, I want you to imagine yourself as a paraprofessional or a children's health assistant or a teacher. And I want to just illustrate for you and help you understand the real life consequences of the district withholding full CPI on July 1st for all workers MTA represents. So our members stopped getting paychecks in June. They received their last paycheck in June. And they don't then resume getting paychecks until September. And our members take multiple jobs and are constantly seeking out additional streams of income to support their household budget. They do that during the regular school year. And then again, renew those efforts and add on more in the summer so that they can weather the months that they are unpaid and have no paycheck coming in. And so a member spends down the little, if they've been able to save anything, set aside anything from the school year, they spend down that small reserve. And by the end of July, our members are relying on food pantries, putting bare necessities on credit cards, and by bare necessities, I mean groceries that they won't be able to pay off until months later, filling up their gas tank, as I referenced earlier, paying their rent, healthcare, or forgoing basic necessities during that time. Basic necessities for themselves and for their children and their family member dependents. And so when I look at the payroll calendar for this year, based on what occurred this year, I expect that there will be 8 paychecks under your proposal. There would be 8 paychecks before January 1st with 0 cost of living adjustment, which is a real hit on workers' wages. And for the members, it's a smaller number of members, but we have a small number of members who do work year round. That hits them even harder. And so when we are talking with our paraprofessional and CHA members, they're not excited about your proposals. They're alarmed by them. And we're actually hoping in discussion today that we could get some clarity from the administration. It's our understanding that large numbers of paraprofessionals and CHAs have been cut from 40 hours to 30 hours, resulting in a 25% pay cut for those workers. And today, this morning, I was notified, and I'm just hoping that the administration can give clarity here and tell us if this is accurate. Project Stay, one of our alternative high schools located downtown, where students are returning after having a rough spot, getting back up on their feet again, earning credits, and getting themselves on a strong post-secondary path for life. And so today we were informed that all 5 of the paraprofessionals at Project Stay, again, one of our alternative high schools, arguably serving some of the most vulnerable and in need secondary students that we have in the district, that all 5 of those para positions have been taken away from the students at Project Stay for next year. So I could pause there and see if there's just clarity that the administration can add, or you have response.
I'll let you keep going. I've noted that, and I don't think that's within the scope of the core issue on CPI today. So it is something that we can get you an answer on following the bargaining.
Sure, it's certainly within the scope because we don't understand your financial position. But I can continue. So School communities across MPS have been entirely destabilized by the current budget process that they are living through. MPS families are disturbed about what this means for their children. Principals have been scrambling for 6 weeks or more, trying to get very simple questions answered, to get all the information they need to get the full picture of how many committed paraprofessionals, teachers that are currently in their school right now, serving students who won't be there in the fall when students return for next school year. MTEA workers are living through these real destabilizing effects of this budget process. And longtime community supporters of MPS are seeing the chaos and the havoc that's been unleashed in our schools through this budgeting process. So to a lot of MPS workers, MPS doesn't feel like a great place to work right now. And this disordered, chaotic, unnecessary budget gauntlet that workers are living through is having quick and clear results. People who never imagined their professional life anywhere else but Milwaukee Public Schools don't know what will happen next. The predictability that workers need to make decisions for themselves and their families. And many of those workers have held on for one thing and one thing only, and that is their students. They chose Milwaukee Public Schools as their first choice, not as their default, not as a third choice or a fifth choice, but as their choice. Because they believe strongly in ensuring that our students have the very best. So we are seriously considering everything that you've shared with us. But the administration can send a clear message to workers today that would bring a measure of stability and hope to frontline school workers who exceed expectations every single day as they do their level best to serve students and absorb the ongoing stress, excuse me, of covering for all of the vacancies in their schools. 109 teacher vacancies. And I believe 94 paraprofessional vacancies. And so we're confused. And I think you understand what we're asking for. It's a consistent theme and message that you're hearing from ASC, the Principals Union, MTEA, MPS Family, School Engagement Councils, workers. A full 2.63% cost of living on July 1st for all MTA workers is an extremely modest proposal that we know would have significant return on investment. And we're a school district, and we don't, often talk about or think about return on investment. It's not part of how we discuss our work. So we're very confused when you say that you can't afford our proposal, but you say you have a range of proposals that you can afford. So it would be very helpful to us to understand what you're asserting your position is in terms of the actual amount that you say you can or can't afford, because we are in the dark about that. So for option A, and let's just look at option A for the moment. In this proposal, your starting teacher salary stays exactly where it is right now, which is entirely counterproductive to the massive retention, recruitment, and hiring that the administration will have to do to guarantee that students in every classroom and school have licensed permanent teachers in their classrooms and paraprofessionals to support their learning. We're very confused about how option A would be productive to retaining workers that you currently have and in recruiting new workers. So I'm imagining these recruitment conversations with potential new hires who can go anywhere. Where administration would be showing them in conversations now, in the spring, in the summer, that their wages will remain stagnant, that there's been no increase. And the pause that would give someone brand new thinking of coming to Milwaukee Public Schools and thinking of making Milwaukee Public Schools their professional home. And that would be the same scenario with your option B. Excuse me. Over the past 7 years, Milwaukee Public Schools has seen mobility rates that are lower than surrounding districts. We've seen them decrease. And it is absolutely connected to workers seeing a clear economic path that they can follow with their families and make a long-term, we hope, professional life commitment to the students of Milwaukee Public Schools. Because mobility is really hard on our students. So all that we can gather is that the administration has everything budgeted out for next year, that you're operating from a draft budget. And the administration has asserted that, you know, the very small, and again, that's why we want to see costing, because we think we're about $6 million apart, but that's why we want to see costing. $6 million in a $1.6 billion budget. The absolute gut punch the district would sustain in staffing. And just understand that what that really means is the loss that students will experience because of loss in staffing. Because they don't see the Milwaukee Public Schools as a place that values their work, that values frontline workers with children every day in classrooms and schools. And so we are really eager to see your costing because it's from our perspective, we're just so very close. And we do not know why the administration would proceed in such a dangerous way to deliver that kind of gut punch to workers across the district when you have never needed them more. I just had a note here too. I know like in the initial documents that you sent over, you had identified your bargaining team members. Have there been any changes to the composition of your bargaining team?
I think so. I think,
Well, yeah, Nick's not here. So. I just hear.
and I try. Did you hear that, Amy?
I'm sorry, no.
Nick Sinram is not here. Aicha is.
Right, so Nick Sinram, your former budget director. And Aicha is replacing Nick on your team. And then no other changes?
No, I don't believe so.
The document that I have had identified Michael Harris as a member of the bargaining team. Is that just an error?
That may have been an error.
He's not a part of the bargaining team. And the document also identified Chief of Schools Keely Roberts as a member of the bargaining team.
He's not, no longer a member.
Keely, the Chief of Schools. Is someone replacing the Chief of Schools, Keely Roberts?
Not at this point, no.
I'm so
Not
sorry.
at this point, no.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be clear, Amy, and I apologize for not doing an introduction for Aicha, but our bargaining team are the individuals who have been introduced at the table during the prior sessions and are here today, with the exception of welcome Aicha and no longer Nick.
Thank you.
I assume yours are the same.
Our bargaining team composition has not changed. We do have a couple of absences. Today, we had a couple of absences last time as well, but we have had no changes to our bargaining team.
Okay, thanks.
So it's our understanding that individual school principals at each school are currently engaged, I think this is ongoing, in critical needs stand-up requests. Is that accurate?
Those stand-up requests for essentials were provided to principals. And we are providing additional supports to principals for stand-up requests as we are able to identify new revenues. So it will be ongoing throughout as revenues come into the district.
What new revenues do you anticipate?
Well, I was hoping there would be additional special ed revenue from the legislature. And there are other streams of revenue that we are looking at and trying to provide additional. We just finished a transportation study that I have to bring forward to the district board in April. If that could provide additional savings, we would realize those, but those are not savings until next year. And of course, they have all would come with potential costs to services, et cetera. So that has to be presented. But I will continue to uncover as many sources as I possibly can. If there are additional vacancies through retirements, if there are additional positional vacancies through attrition this summer, and we will come back to the October budget for adjustments at that time as well. And if we have any kind of increases in enrollment or decreases in enrollment, obviously that affects revenues as well over the next several months. So as we look to and realize those revenues, we will continue to adjust on any kind of stand-up requests that schools have throughout the year, as we normally always have, and then bring that back for October adjustment.
Thank you.
So I told principals, keep their list active, because we just don't know what we will be able to do in our October adjustment.
How many schools have made their critical needs stand-up requests so far?
Every school has made their stand-up request.
They're all completed.
They're all completed in the area that we could complete with the additional revenues that we believe that we had available. So they're all complete for class size, for class size, there's psychosocial counselors, AMPs. Those were the priorities that we put out there for classroom supports. And then we are looking toward whatever types of other revenues agreements we can get and find it within the budget to do additional if it's possible before we have to present a final budget in May.
And so the administration has approved a number of critical needs stand-up requests thus far.
That's right.
And how much have you approved thus far?
I will get that to you. We are still doing all of our reconciling, making sure that we are doing our grant accounting as well as what's Fund 10, what's Fund 27, and doing all of that reconciling. So that's happening this week and next, but happy to provide that to MTEA upon completion with our budget analysts.
Mm-hmm. And that, are we to understand that the critical needs stand-up requests, that those funds are coming from the 30 million that you stated was realized from the 260 cuts on March 9th?
It comes from the overall bucket. I mean, there's multiple macro budget items that are coming in with the revenues. And so all of that goes into a larger pot. And then we're now reconciling between which pot, whether it's grants, whether it's Fund 10, and whether it's Fund 27, special ed. And so all that reconciling is going on, and we'd be happy to answer those questions more in detail when we have all of that reconciling done. This, as you can imagine, is position by position, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that's vacancies that we're realizing savings as well.
Mm-hmm. Is it accurate, though, that the savings, the funds that you realized from the 260 cuts is $30 million?
So approximately 30 million.
Thank you. In addition to knowing the total of critical needs stand-up requests that were approved, we would also like to know the total that were not approved.
Yes.
And Dr. Casellas, you mentioned...
And not approved yet. So I want to just continue to,
sure.
to say that this is an ongoing process. When you have a $50 million deficit, we're looking at every school budget, looking at every master schedule, looking at every single dollar within the priorities that the board has set. And within the priorities that we've shared with our teachers, our educators, and our public, which is direct services to students, protecting our non-classroom, our classroom position.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about, we received standard of care document
Mary.
that references class size guidelines. And then you just mentioned that principal budgets are complete for class size guidelines. That's what you're referencing. How much are you allocating to implement that general ed staffing model?
I would have to get back to you for that number. So that's one of the additional questions you need for you to be able to calculate your counter proposals or ideas. We'd be glad to get that to you.
Can you explain, because we don't understand, what is meant by the word guideline?
Yeah, so just quickly, that's typically, so we have some schools that are oversubscribed because of size. There's some schools that
You said that are over
subscribed. So we have higher class sizes in some schools, but because they are don't have room to expand.
They don't have the physical space.
Exactly. They don't have the physical space to meet a class size. And we don't want to do any harm to any current students and tell them they have to leave. And principals have said that they want to still maintain those class sizes, and their parent councils have said that they want to maintain those higher class sizes. So they've elected, there's some that have elected not to be within the 1 to 22. And so we're working on other strategies for that. So it's guideline is not like a hard, like no one's going to get a fine if they go over, say, 22 students in a kindergarten classroom. However, that's our guidance for where we want to be within that framework.
But there's no requirement.
Well, there's no hard or fast requirement that you are going to be fined or punished. In Tennessee, when I was there, there was an actual fine if you went over from the state.
Yeah.
There's not anything like that. We are using that as a guideline for how we staff, and then also how we look at for future enrollment and placement at the school from our enrollment office to control for class size across the system.
And so principals are free to opt out.
Not necessarily. It's when there is not space, then we have to consider the students who are already there.
Okay, that's helpful. So you were saying, yeah. So for schools that don't have space.
Yeah. We've asked other schools to open up classrooms where they were over.
So my list isn't, this is the best list that I have. We've identified 48 schools and looked at their actual enrollment versus their capacity and then their utilization rate. And so we have approximately 48 schools that have a utilization rate into the 90% area, all the way up to, 167% utilization at 95th Street School. Excuse me. Or 130% at Burbank, 154% at Greenfield. And so none of those schools all of those principals can opt out.
What I would suggest, because I don't have the same list that you have, is that I would be happy to meet and confer with you on class size and the class size guidelines, the standard of care, have the academic superintendents come to that meeting and talk about their decisions with their principals and how they were staffing their schools.
Yeah,
and the process per school. So I'd love to do that on a meet and confer.
We would appreciate that opportunity. We are asking today from a perspective of understanding your financial position.
Yeah, so I don't, I could bring back an analysis to you for that. I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
But I think in terms of the overall balancing of the district, that's probably better for a meet and confer session. Happy to provide financial analysis to you on what that looks like. Sure. But in terms of overall balancing, I'd prefer to talk with you because it's complicated with master schedules and staffing patterns, and whether it's a comp class or not a comp class, different types of classes that we have. Probably going school by school would be more appropriate with the academic superintendent, with the understanding from each principal on a meet and confer type of basis.
So let me see if I can ask this in a very simple way. Are we to understand that for these 48, and again, I know you don't have this list of 48 in front of you, but whatever this number is, are we to understand that students at those schools would be opted out of the class size guidelines?
What I would like to do is look at those 48 schools and then better understand each school's individual situation.
We can send those to you. One last question on those schools. Let me use a very, very specific example. I'm thinking about the 3, 4, and 5-year-old classroom at Fernwood. And Michelle, you're going to help me with the title of the 3, 4, and 5-year-old classroom. Primary. Thank you. The primary that serves multi-grade age, 3, 4, and 5-year-old. Those classrooms are famously highly enrolled.
Yeah.
Fernwood doesn't have physical space to expand.
That's right.
So then, does the principal then have the option of opting out entirely, or then adding an additional teacher to that classroom to meet guidelines?
The strategy for the Montessoris, one was to talk to the Montessoris themselves, right, and see what kind of model they wanted to manage their class size and their programming in their schools. So that was the first stage. The second is 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds all pushed in a para. So they have para support within those classrooms to bring down class size. So that was a strategy as well that's been used and deployed.
So when you talk about reducing class size, you're factoring in para support, that is...
For some cases, we are. I don't have your list in each specific school. I need to know each specific school. But
if I'm a principal and I'm trying to put myself in the position of a principal coming to meet with you and your cabinet on critical needs stand-up requests.
Yep.
I can say, listen, we've looked at the guidelines, but we're not going to utilize these guidelines because we need all of our 40-hour paras, we need all of our 40-hour CHAs.
Again, I would need to look at each individual,
But can a principal say that, is what I'm asking?
not without like some really educational reason for it. And so we would need to understand the processes for it. So I'm uncomfortable talking about any one specific school without knowing how that school, that parent council, that principal, that staff determined with their academic superintendent what was best. If you would provide me the list of schools, I would be happy to investigate each of those schools and what they did. But generally, your question, the spirit of your question is, how I'm receiving it is, are you using guidelines to manage class size? The answer to that is yes. Are there exceptions? The answer to that is yes. Can a principal unilaterally make that decision? The answer to that is no. There must be an instructionally sound reason for making an exception that is approved by their school educators, their school leader, and their academic superintendent bringing that recommendation forward.
That's helpful. Thank you. We are concerned about school engagement councils because we know that we have many schools without school engagement councils. And we know that we have many schools that have a school engagement council on paper only, but not actually.
If you have a list
functioning,
of highly functioning ones that you think could use a little bit more training, and ones where there are none being reported to you, please share that with me.
Sure.
So we can get that with our family.
We are hoping to get from you, though, where you have with certainty an actual school engagement council that's
Happy
operating.
To provide that as well as part of the additional questions. But if you have heard from your members anything about the efficacy of those where they do exist, please share that with us, and we will make sure that we can provide it.
And of course, Amy, you know, that's something we can always talk about in a meet and confer as well.
Absolutely.
Especially to the extent that it touches any management decisions outside of the scope.
We would be happy to talk about nuts and bolts and details of where we have functioning SECs and where we don't.
Yes.
But everything that we're pursuing here is to try to understand the true financial position of the district and how dollars are being approved and spent or not.
And if you have additional questions that you want to provide to us, we are open to looking at those and getting those back to you as well. Or if you'd like to caucus as well.
Yeah, and so we would be curious about, for example, I'm told that there is no school engagement council at Obama.
I'm unaware of that. I would have to look into whether there was or was not.
That would be helpful for us to know. So the class size, it's not a maximum, it's not a cap, it's not a requirement. It's a guideline. There will be exceptions. It'd be helpful for us to know the breadth of those exceptions. And we know that you can't speak to that right here today. Again, so that it will assist us in having clear information on.
I'm happy to meet confer as well on
financial
items
position
that you think would be good items to put in, like that decision-making matrix, and how we make that as well. Because it's a practice in the district for multiple years. It's not something new. And so if you have, suggestions or ideas on that practice, happy to entertain those as well, and consider those as part of future stand-up requests that schools bring, school councils bring. and how that process can just continue to be improved.
So are you saying that the class size guidelines are just guidelines that previously existed in Milwaukee Public Schools?
We do have some class guidelines in policy. Yes, they've just, I don't believe that they've been enforced, or managed.
Precisely.
And what we're trying to do is manage the class size, manage the enrollment across the district, create greater equity across our schools from those who have and those who have not in our school district.
Yeah. So anything that you can share with us going forward about enforcement? Yeah. Because what we're understanding is that there is no requirement, no enforcement, no teeth.
Yeah, I can speak to
leaving us
what
unclear.
I've been attempting to do this year and what we are going to be doing next year and how we'll be managing that process. Happy to meet and confer on that as well, and share with you on how we're going to be managing class size going forward. We started work with, and I've been public with this with the board, with Formative to come in and help us manage our class sizes and how we're making decisions around enrollment and placement. This is inclusive of special ed. We have a special ed audit going on. I think these matters are probably better handled in more detail at a meet and confer so that we can make sure that you fully understand the work of the district around how we're going to be managing class size.
So no argument. We should meet and confer.
Happy to do that.
We need to understand your financial position and how class size guidelines do or don't factor into budgeting that you're doing.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Certainly.
But Amy, you understand we're not going to negotiate over class size in the bargaining session, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've been living the constraints of Act 10 and meet and confer for a very long time. So we know exactly what we can bargain over.
Great.
But still, with the spirit of your question, I mean, we have nothing to hide. I think this was one of the number one things I hear from teachers across the district is that they're interested in lowering their class sizes. So as much as we can begin to manage them and lower them where we can at the early grade, we're going to attempt to do so.
Right. And we need to understand the staffing required for what you're undertaking and whether just having more information about where this is and isn't occurring.
Happy to provide it.
Because we don't know if it's happening at 50 schools or 30 schools or.
Happy to provide it. We won't know it definitively until after school starts, because that's when we'll know our true enrollment, right? I mean, that's when we'll know who's showing up for next year for this year's budget, for this upcoming budget for FY27. And there will be adjustments made because of the October, the third Friday and the October adjustment. And that's not outside of what has normally happened in this district for many, many years. I just want to be really transparent about that.
Okay. I mentioned this previously, but I want to raise it again. Have you factored in turnover savings? And this is what I mean by that. When a teacher retires at the top of the pay scale, or a teacher resigns at the top of the pay scale, and then a teacher is hired to replace them at the, most often at the early end of the pay scale. Thank you. Has the district factored in all of the savings that you claw back from that in your budgeting?
one, that we're always ongoing, looking at attrition and looking at vacancy rate and looking at, retention rates and that sort of thing as part of the overall budgeting process. For the specific number, we would have to get back to you on what that actually is and add it to the list of questions that you have for us. Happy to do that, and speak to our budget team and financial team about it.
So do you have a draft budget that you're operating from?
We have the revenue and the budget numbers that we've shared publicly. So we have, the monthly actuals, the financials that we're working from, and we're budgeting off of those, and what revenues are in and what are going out. Happy to provide to you those items.
So you've budgeted everything out for next year?
It's a continued budget process of looking at our revenues and our expenditures and where we're at and trying to make up the hole that we have.
So that's part of our confusion, is that if you say that you're not operating from a mostly complete budget, I understand.
We are. We have a budget. We have our targets. We know where we're headed toward. We know how much money is in the coffer. And then as we give out new stand-ups, we know that we've got to make up that money. So there's this moving budget that we're working within the numbers that we have and the numbers that we've shared.
But the budget is still in flux.
The budget is always in flux as we get money in and take out money and as we realize savings.
And so that's a continued concern for us, is that if the budget is clearly still in flux, we don't understand your assertion that you cannot afford.
What I will provide to you is what we're working from with the macro numbers. Obviously, we have folks who go in and out in positions in our district every single day in terms of line item by line item. We continue to do deep dives in our contracts to try to realize new savings in contracts and ones that we can end. That then adds. But I will provide to you the financial picture that we're looking at, and get that to you as soon as I can in terms of kind of a more. It won't be perfect and concrete because things are in and out moving as we're doing these stand-ups and making exceptions, but happy to provide that to you.
Okay. But the district clearly has funds that they're spending.
Every day we spend funds, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we get money in and we put it out.
And so it's not that the district can't afford full CPI on July 1st for MTEA workers. It's that the district has decided to withhold that full 2.63% on July 1st from the people working with children in school. It's not that you can't afford it. It's
I don't think that's a fair assessment. And I'd like to kind of recenter on why we're here. We're here to talk about base wages, right? And you mentioned a couple of things that I thought were really, really important and I think helpful because it's points that we all agree on. And predictability is one theme that you touched on so far. And you mentioned that workers need predictability. That is what we're trying to provide through this process, is helping in understanding that individuals need to do their own personal budgets. We're trying to reach that level of predictability as faster in the process than I understand MPS has ever done before. And that's one component of MTS's budget is wages, which is what we're here to discuss. You mentioned that MPS is full of dedicated teachers who care about their students and that we want to keep them. We agree on that. No disputes there. And again, we're trying to correct a structural deficit in the budget to ensure that there is an MPS for those people to work at. And that's part of, that all adds into another theme you mentioned, needing stability and stabilizing. That's why this process that Dr. Casillas and her team is going through, it has been more transparent than I understand it's ever been before, is because they're trying to stabilize the district and dig out of that $46 million structural deficit. And so predictability and finding ways to, retain and staff and strengthen the district and make it a great place to work are all shared goals. I would like to know if we can agree that, when we're talking about numbers, I think the most important number is that $46 million structural deficit. Do you dispute that exists? Or do you agree that is a challenge that the district is faced with solving?
So, I'm happy to talk about this. I have, it's clear to us, it's clear to everyone that $46 million in the context of a $1.6 billion budget is minute. It's not insignificant. It's in the context of a $1.6 billion budget. It would help us to know if that 46 million is being spread out over the course of budget years. Or 3 budget year. We're unclear.
We have to provide to the board a structurally balanced budget for FY27 and account for that structural imbalance now.
And so, is it spread out over 2 years, or
we are working to resolve that $46 million over the next fiscal year.
You're not spreading it out over 2 years?
We're not going into FY28 because we have $14 million of revenue coming in FY28.
But you have the option.
But there's no additional money coming in FY28 other than the $14 million. So to provide for salary increases, to provide for all of the expenses that you eloquently shared with cost of fuel prices, all of our buses that, anticipating transportation costs going up, food costs going up, all of those healthcare costs going up into the next year, beyond this coming year, is going to provide for a structural imbalance and provide for a really difficult situation for us. So we have to account for the $46 million in a time when we are in a better position with additional revenues coming in from the referenda than in the future when we have already committed to additional increases when we won't have additional money to cover for it. So we're trying to be responsible, not just for the upcoming school year, but for the outlook of the next 2 to 3 years as well. Outside of getting new funding from the state, I don't know how we find new revenue and potentially referenda and going to our voters for additional revenue as well. Because it's not a good outlook into the future years. And so trying to avoid future year challenges to the district as well. So.
And in terms of the the 46 million in the context of $1.6 billion. Were there contingency or reserve funds that the district had the district not set aside in their regular budgeting process some reserve contingency funds?
No, I mean, maybe Ms. Saba can ask that, and I'm certainly glad to come back to the answer to that question. My understanding is there's $500,000 in the fund, and there's not a large reserve.
There was 500,000 set aside in this year's budget in reserve.
That's my understanding. That's what's in the reserve.
We did see, I just want to make sure that this is accurate, the communication about administration identifying $5 million in contracts.
That's accurate. Continuing to look for additional savings in that area.
Mm-hmm. So it's MTA's position that there are many millions more.
I would love you to give me a list of contracts that you believe that are available for us to end. Obviously, our biggest contracts are nutrition and transportation services, some special ed services, and then some services with some of our grant funding as well that we send out for the management of our title funds as well.
Yeah, we see a path there.
Great. I'd love to get ideas around grants. Happy to entertain those. So just provide a list, and we will scrutinize every single one. We've been scrutinizing them for the past 2 months, doing a deep dive in all of our contracts, so what we can end, what needs to continue. Some of those operational facilities, educational contracts is probably the area you're thinking where we could end some of those contracts as well.
And then Dr. Caselius, you had shared earlier about a transportation study that you're bringing to the board in April.
Yeah.
Are there anticipated savings there?
There is. I'm anxious to get it to the board. But it doesn't come without like start times. Students who would have to walk a little bit further, a block or two. Not with any safety issues or cost savings with cost share for, special ed parents bringing their children to school instead of taking a bus, or fitting more students on a bus, or changing tiers. So any of those policy decisions come with operational challenges, need to be considered by the board, and just know that every single one of those challenges comes with challenges operationally. And then also reviewing our contract with the county as well, and the cost of that. So bringing down some transportation costs would certainly be in our benefit. Also, we're looking at cost capture and reimbursement with breakfast. I'm sure everyone's heard about that. And that's an area where we're hoping to gain additional revenue, and we would prepare the food. We need to improve attendance for students so we can improve the capture rate, as well as students taking the meals that are prepared for them so that we can get reimbursed for them. So all of these pieces operationally are places where we want to create efficiencies and maximize our capture.
Is the current budget line for transportation at around 60 million?
Don't have that exact number, but I think it's around
closer to 70 million.
Yeah. We'll get you the exact number. I don't have the exact number right here. I don't want to misspeak. Yeah, we overspend always. Every year we overspend transportation. And I mean, I can only imagine now with these fuel prices what it might mean, So
I just heard you say that the district overspends in transportation every year. Is transportation part of the
because they
46
under
million?
budget it every year.
Mm-hmm. Transport, okay.
And it has to be appropriately budgeted every single year. And that's something that has come to my attention. So we need to appropriately budget for the real costs that we have for transportation, the real costs that we have for benefits, the real costs that we have for electricity. So the budgeting just has to be better. That's just being very transparent.
But essentially you are anticipating bringing an administrative recommendation
Yes.
to the board in April.
Well, I don't know if I'm bringing them the report
Okay.
in April.
But not a recommendation.
I don't know if it'll be ready for a recommendation because we just received a draft and now we have to review that with the transportation team and what is actually operational in an implementation timeline for FY27. So the recommendations that they are bringing, we have to first understand operationally what the impacts would be, and then we have to do whatever engagement we would need to do to make recommendations to the board. I'm not sure we have enough time to realize all of them in this budget. It may be something that would be realized in the FY28 budget.
Mm-hmm.
Given I'm not going to change start times on families for next year, so I think that's the challenge. But could I try to negotiate a better deal with our county partners? Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
So.
And we will send this in an information request, but we would like to see and have an understanding of the 5 million that you've identified in contracts.
Sure.
With just like simple understanding of the function of each contract.
And can we get your list of where you think we can look, because time is of the essence?
Yep. Sure. I want to go back to something to again, like understand financial picture district-wide, but also at schools. Have you cut 40-hour pairs and CHAs to 30 hours?
I don't have that list for you, Amy. I would need to look school by school and get to you where it is not across the board. That's for sure. That's like, it's not like an across the board thing. It's based on the minutes that students would need. So I need to talk to our special ed folks, and I need to talk to our schools and find out and get that summary because I don't have it right here in front of me, school by school. But if you want to request that from me, I'd be happy to share and do an analysis of that.
Yeah, we're just confused because we're hearing, and this started several weeks ago when we had a couple of principals who were calling paras into their office one by one and telling them that they were going to be cut from 40 to 30 hours. And you're saying that it's not across the board.
Yeah.
What is it based on?
Well, it depends on what type of para, obviously. If they're special ed paras who we need to serve their minutes and their IEPs. And then, CHAs also work with many of our students with disabilities. And so it would depend on what the needs of the students are at the school. And then the school needs at the school and what they have in their budget. And then some schools have additional title funding where they can up the hours of a para and with their title funding. And so every school, it's school by school by school based on what they need at the school. So I don't have that list in front of me. to speak to 139 different scenarios. But happy to take any particular questions you have about any particular schools, or provide to you a summary.
That's drastically concerning to us because for about 3 or 4 weeks now, we've had paraprofessionals and CHAs coming to us saying, I can't afford to work in more public schools.
Yeah. Well, that was the number one thing they talked to me about when we sat down with them, right? I mean, they said that was really hard when I heard them. So like, and in cases where we can provide up to 40 hours, we want to get to that. I think they're different. Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like 30, 32, 35, 37, and 40. And so they're all different increments, depending on the school and what they've purchased, in terms of hours for the paras.
Is it related to standard of care ratios?
Not the hours.
But the number of paraprofessionals?
Some that would be part of the overall calculation, depending on, like, if you're an AGR school, and you are, you can expand, we might lower your class size by pushing in a para that way if you're AGR school. So there's different scenarios for every school and how paras were assigned to classrooms. There's special ed needs for covering for special ed services.
We also had questions about the online community budget meeting, the 4th budget session. So at JMAC, Riverside, Pulaski, and then there was an online session where our members were understanding you to say that you're considering cutting K3 and K4.
No, I never said I would cut K3 or K4. There may be other funding sources. Our K3 students are not funded out of state aid at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we absorb that cost.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite 2 years ago, I think it was December of 2024, we lost the Head Start grant,
Mm-hmm.
$22 million to the district.
Mm-hmm.
We still absorbed those students, to my understanding, but we didn't have the funding for the 3-year-olds. I am seeking different types of revenues to try to find ways to fund our 3-year-olds. That's what I said.
You're not, I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a way to fund the 3-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And 4, you're not cutting.
And half of the 4, we get half funding for 4-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in the future, I mean, if we have dire straits in the district in a year or two because we can't afford it, we have to look at all the options on the table. I don't know what else to do, I mean, it's something certainly we would bring to the community and talk about. That's why I'm trying to seek other revenue sources for that funding. It's my understanding, to be fully transparent with this team, that some of our 3-year-olds are funded out of rec funding and they get a match or some additional funding from federal subsidies for childcare assistance programs. So I'm wondering, and I don't know the answer because I'm new to Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
if we could maximize those revenues for 3-year-olds in the future. I just don't have those answers and don't think I'll have those answers for this year. So things like transportation study, looking at how we fund our 3-year-olds, looking at high cost special ed. These are all revenue sources that I think could help us in future years to pay for increases, to pay for costs in inflationary costs of energy and other things for future years in FY 28 and 29 that we could realize. I don't think we'd have the answers to those for this current fiscal year. And I'm not counting on the answers to those for this current fiscal budget.
So, the possibility that rec funds can be utilized to support K-3,
I don't think we could get that done for this year. I think it would be
but is it a question of whether or not you can?
yes, it's a question of whether or not we can, because it has to be a community benefit. It's more of a question, particularly at our Montessori's, because you can't commingle state aids in there. So because we have them with the way that they do their multi-grade, you have 3, 4, 5-year-olds in a grade. So we need to get answers from that. We're exploring all of those options. And this is probably more for a meet and confer, but I want to be respectful and answer your questions. But I just want you to understand that I am trying my darndest to try to continue to find funding, not just for this year, but for multiple years going out, not only maximizing efficiencies and making cuts and reductions within the district, but also trying to find where have we either missed opportunities for revenue within our work? How do we budget more accurately for the expenses that we have? And how do we find new revenue that's not just state revenue or going for referenda? You know, are there other creative uses or allowable uses within state law for current revenue streams that we are not maximizing? That's just a different level of analysis that I'm doing. I have the Council of Great City Schools in here helping us, and we're trying to just get to the bottom of those questions.
Is the district pursuing a Head Start grant?
The Head Start grant was given to, I asked this question, was given to a different organization. I can't remember exactly who got it. And it's not eligible. I don't think it will open again until 27. I think it's in 27 it will open again for us to compete with it.
Will MPS submit a proposal in 2027?
It's my intent that we would compete for it. I'm going to compete for every type of revenue we can get into the district.
Do you, in terms of sharing costing, is that something that you can do after caucus or?
I don't think so, but
Tomorrow.
I think we're meeting tomorrow. I could meet with our budget team and see what we could pull together for you that would be usable and easy. I mean, obviously we have budget line by budget line and budget books and that sort of thing. And a lot of it's in the computer right now, and I'm not sure they're done with their reconciling. So I need to check in with their team if it would be ready even for tomorrow, but we'll do our best to get information that would be useful to you for tomorrow as best we can.
Okay.
If you could be clear with us on what your asks are and what your questions are, that would be.
Well, I'm just talking about costing right now.
Right, but I don't asked a lot of questions, and so I want to make sure I know specifically what you need for you to produce any kind of counter or to review any kind of other recommendations that you could provide to us that would help. If you could get that to us in writing, that would be really helpful to us.
Certainly. Certainly. I just wanted to be, you're not prepared to share costing with us after a caucus today.
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
We're reconciling right now, and I don't think the budget team's ready for that right now.
Okay.
What do you mean by costing? I want to make sure we're all thinking about it the same. Are you talking about the cost of the proposals?
Option A, option B, option C.
Yeah, no, I think we could share that after. I thought you wanted a lot more that you're at. If you could tell me specifically what you are thinking.
So for right now, just for like taking a next step here today, do you have costing for proposals or options A, B, and C
Yes,
that you can?
for CPI, right?
Correct.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to take to do a caucus. We can confirm that our numbers are right and current, and present those following a caucus. Probably also, I mean, we've gone for almost 2 hours, so it's probably a good time to stretch and take a break as well. Before we do that, you said you were going to come back to my question on whether we can agree on the structural deficit being an important consideration, that $46 million being a real number and a real challenge.
I did respond to it.
I may have missed it, sorry.
Contextualize that $46 million inside of a $1.6 billion budget.
Okay.
So
the answer is yes. And then to what extent it's important, we maybe have a disagreement on.
Well, we very much have a disagreement that we're trying to bridge on the very little amount of money that we believe we are a part and the massive return on investment to invest in frontline workers.
Okay, so we will break the caucus. We'll come back with the numbers. Our question's still outstanding, whether or not you've got a counter proposal or if there's any timing arrangement or different split ideas that you have to help bridge that gap. And so we'll come back and discuss those items. Should we say we set a time to do that?
That'd be good. And then
Maybe 2:30 or 2:20?
Well, we also, our team gets the opportunity to go through the responses that you sent last night.
Okay. Well, do you want to say
And that will take some time.
maybe come back at 3?
I think I
do
have.
we pick up tomorrow, or do we caucus, get the macro numbers on the cost, get those to you within by 3:30, and then you can have that, and then we pick up tomorrow? Or do you want to come back? I mean,
We're happy to do that.
yeah, I think that probably makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, we can do either way. So if you want more than just an hour or an hour and a half, you can just
That way then.
adjourn for the day
go
and
back
pick up tomorrow.
Go back over there and
Sure.
we can go up and
Opposite. Or just use this as a
find it more
working
comfortable.
session. So that
Okay. We will need time to review and digest the responses that you gave in the 4 categories as well. And then we have additional questions that we will send in writing to you. So why don't we do this? If it's if this works for you, we appreciate you getting a room for caucus today. We would appreciate a room tomorrow as well. I think that we can go back to our office, sit and go through and have discussion on your responses. And then if you're able to, I know you said 3:30, but if at some point later this afternoon, if you can send your costing, and then we could pick this up tomorrow.
Great.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.